What are the best weapons in Monster Hunter Wilds? With 14 unique weapons to choose from, this decision can seem difficult, especially for any beginners to the series. Your weapon choice will determine how you play the game, and it has a big effect on your overall experience. If you go in blindly and choose a weapon that's incompatible with your playstyle, for example, it could possibly make your experience less enjoyable. At the end of the day, there's really no best weapon in Monster Hunter. The best weapon is going to be the one you have the most fun playing with. Luckily for you guys, this weapon guide is designed to provide you with an overview of each weapon, how it plays, pros and cons, and I even included my own personal weapon tier list at the end for those of you looking for weapons with the most valuable perks. I feel like Monster Hunter Wilds is going to be the first Monster Hunter game for a lot of people this year. I know many veterans to the series are excited for this new entry, but it's never too late for anyone to start playing these incredible games, and what better way to start than a fresh, next-gen Monster Hunter game. It feels incredible to play, and I'm sure many of you are excited to sink hundreds of hours into it. Let's get started. The Greatsword offers a high-risk, high-reward playstyle. This weapon is heavy, which means slower, more methodical attacks, but what you sacrifice in speed, you gain in damage. It's most suitable for hit-and-run tactics, but thanks to its guard capabilities and the ability to parry enemy attacks when you block at the right moment, this weapon is very versatile. With the introduction of the new focus mode in Monster Hunter Wilds, aiming is now more precise, which means this weapon is even deadlier than before. It's also the perfect weapon choice for beginners since it doesn't have a steep learning curve compared to some of the other weapons in the game. Your biggest challenge will be timing your attacks to ensure you can deal the maximum amount of damage possible before a monster is able to knock you down. The Greatsword isn't the fastest weapon, but when it lands, it can deal massive amounts of damage. If you're unsure of which weapon to use and you're finding it difficult to make a decision, you can't go wrong with the Sword and Shield. This is because it's simple to use and it has its own built-in defensive ability. This weapon has received some much needed improvements in Monster Hunter Wilds, including a new charged chop attack to help you target specific areas when fighting stubborn monsters, the ability to use Rising Slash while guarding, and you can also throw in the ability to perfect guard attacks, making it another versatile weapon choice. The Sword and Shield has a focus attack called Vital Stab, which allows you to slash downward for massive wound damage, or slash upward to become airborne, allowing you to mount monsters in the process. The biggest drawback to the Sword and Shield is its range, so if you're looking for something that deals a little bit more damage and provides more range in combat, your best option may be the Greatsword. The hammer is a slow and powerful weapon that can stun monsters easily with well-timed charged attacks. The Earthquake focus attack, which causes your hunter to spin in a circle, dealing massive damage over a large area, can be very lethal when timed correctly. It may seem very straightforward at first, but you'll soon realize even though this weapon can deal massive amounts of damage to monsters, it has two major flaws. It lacks any defensive options, which can be crucial during difficult fights, and if you want to be efficient, you'll need to learn monster attack patterns since the hammer's attacks require more effort and preparation compared to other weapons. I'm not saying this to steer you away from using this weapon because I do believe it can be very deadly in the right hands, but I think it's important for beginners to know the hammer is a difficult weapon to master due to its requirement to understand enemy attack patterns during combat. The lance has always had a reputation of being the least used weapon in the Monster Hunter series, probably because it lacks any sort of mobility and is the safest weapon to use, which can be a boring playstyle for some people. However, for those of you looking to tank enemy damage and be the backbone of your team when you're playing with friends, the lance may be a great option for you. It has a great balance of defense and offense to ensure you are well protected while using your shield with the ability to consistently deal damage with your lance. One con to this weapon is the fact that it really isn't beginner friendly since it requires a lot of patience and timing if you want to deal any sort of damage to monsters, and it won't really provide that thrill factor of quick movement and hit and run capabilities. The Switch Axe is a powerful weapon that can take on two forms, Axe Mode and Sword Mode. When attacking in Axe Mode, the Switch Axe builds a meter that gives you access to Sword Mode. When the meter is full enough, your hunter can switch to Sword Mode for both increased speed and power. However, there's another gauge that puts you into an amped state where the sword mode becomes even more powerful, unleashing even stronger attacks. What I love most about this weapon is the ability to seamlessly transition between axe mode and sword mode during combat, allowing you to unleash some devastating combos when timed correctly. The biggest drawback to this weapon, I would say, is the over-reliance on the 4-release attack, which really restricts gameplay. But to be honest, it's a visually appealing weapon, and even though it may not have the best range, it can deal a high amount of damage in the right hands. The Insect Glaive is definitely the flashiest weapon in Monster Hunter, but it's also one of the most complicated as well. It isn't beginner friendly at all, but offers a very fun playstyle once you master its moveset, including the ability to remain airborne for long periods of time, consume essence with your Kinsects to provide different buffs for your character, and being able to mount monsters more frequently thanks to the weapon's high mobility. It has a steep learning curve though, which may not seem appealing to the vast majority of people. If you've used the Insect Glaive in other Monster Hunter games, you're going to love it in Wilds. But if this is your first Monster Hunter game and you want a weapon that's easier to use, I would go with the Greatsword, Longsword, and even the Sword and Shield as an example. The heavy bowgun is the perfect choice for anyone that wants to use a heavy machine gun to kill monsters with. It has various firing modes and ammo types, which can be switched seamlessly while in combat, allowing you to focus enemy weak points when needed, and it deals consistent damage from range. The addition of Perfect Guard to this weapon is also nice since it adds a defensive option while in combat. This weapon definitely packs a punch, but its biggest drawback is its lack of mobility. If you want to deal massive amounts of damage from range and be agile at the same time, the bow may be a better option for you. The Longsword is personally my favorite weapon in the entire Monster Hunter series. I've always been a big fan of the Odachi, and I think it's the main reason why I love this weapon so much. It's an easy weapon to pick up, but takes a bit of time to master until you can really witness the Longsword's full potential. When you attack monsters with this weapon, you'll charge up a spirit gauge, which your hunter can then use to unleash powerful spirit blade attacks. These attacks deal massive amounts of damage and are incredibly satisfying to execute. The range is really good, thanks to the weapon's moveset and extended length of the blade, and it's also great for counterattacks thanks to the Foresight Slash. When you're using the Longsword, your main goal is to reach a red spirit gauge as soon as possible because it increases the damage of your attacks and unlocks new movesets to help you target weak points easier. Overall, the Longsword is an incredibly well-rounded weapon, which I highly recommend trying out first if you're unsure of where to start. If you like aggressive playstyles and you want to constantly be on the offensive, the dual blades are the weapon for you. These blades offer very quick melee attacks that can further be enhanced by entering demon mode, which consumes stamina in exchange for stronger, flashier attacks with your dual blades. You can also pair demon mode with archdemon mode if you build a separate gauge by attacking, adding yet another layer of power. I would recommend this weapon for anyone who is highly familiar with action games, since even though it provides zero defense, it rewards constant pressure on monsters, allowing you to destroy enemy weak points with your focus attacks. If you want high mobility, speed, and a weapon that rewards aggressive gameplay, the dual blades will be perfect for you. The Hunting Horn is a very peculiar weapon in the Monster Hunter series. It's basically a giant instrument which treats its combos as mini-games, allowing you to cast party-wide buffs by using certain attacks to channel melodies. It works best as a support weapon, so if you're planning on playing with friends, the Hunting Horn can be an extremely valuable asset to the team. Don't worry though, it doesn't just play music, it also has hammer-like melee attacks which can be used to chip away a monster's health bar and even target weak points when needed. This weapon may not be everyone's first choice, but the echo bubbles and melody storing mechanics bring a unique flair that sets it apart from other weapons. The buffs you can apply to your party includes attack boosts, ailment negation, health recovery, and much more. It'll take a while to wrap your head around it, but it's hands down the best support weapon in the entire game. The Gunlance excels in both offense and defense. It has the ability to deal massive amounts of damage and provides exceptional survivability thanks to its ability to completely negate damage with your shield. It does lack range and mobility though, so keeping up with faster monsters can be quite difficult. You basically trade mobility for incredible burst damage and defense. It's one of the few weapons in the game that allows you to perfect guard in the middle of combos and when you reload, which means you can seamlessly transition between dealing damage and defending yourself. If you don't care about being slow and you want to deal high amounts of damage with your explosive shell attacks, the gun lance may be the option for you. The charge blade is similar to the switch axe because it has two modes. The first mode allows you to wield a sword and shield, which you'll use to charge files in the top left of the screen. You can then switch to axe mode to consume those files you charged to enhance your axe attacks. The focus attack now provides the quickest way for you to switch from sword mode to axe mode. If you hit a wound with it, you'll automatically transition and grind the monster with the axe for massive amounts of damage. The charge blade is up there with some of the other complex weapons. It isn't exactly a weapon you can pick up and be effective with. It does require patience and timing if you want to execute the right combos, but if you spend some time with this weapon and learn to master it, you'll be more than prepared for monster hunts because, to be honest, the charge blade does have exceptional reach, mobility, damage, and guarding. The light bowgun is a smaller version of the heavy bowgun, which makes your hunter more agile in combat. It doesn't have nearly as much range as the heavy bowgun, but it's easy to pick up and now comes with a powerful rapid fire ability that allows you to fire off multiple shots in quick succession. This is the type of weapon you pull out when you are trying to target specific body parts of a monster and stack damage on weak points. It's the perfect secondary to bring with you in battle and can be very valuable when you're fighting monsters who move quickly or even levitate in the air. You'll also be able to apply different status effects to monsters, which can increase your effectiveness in combat depending on the monster you are fighting and which ailments they are weak to. The bow is another one of my personal favorites, and in my opinion, I think it's the best range weapon in Monster Hunter Wilds. The bow will make your hunter extremely agile in combat, which is something that is very important when you're trying to stay out of harm's way. The bow is now better than ever since you no longer have to use consumable coatings. You now build the trick arrow gauge by attacking enemies, which is amazing. Tracer arrow, for example, automatically makes your successive arrows hone in on monsters. Building the gauge for these special arrow types takes a lot of skill as you have to perfect dodge and juggle a few different mechanics, making this weapon a bit more difficult to learn than something like the bowgun, for example. The bow can work as a primary weapon or a secondary whenever you need to switch between melee and range, depending on the monsters you are fighting. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for. The tier list. One thing to keep in mind with weapon tier lists, including this one, is they're subjective, meaning I rank these weapons based off of my own personal opinion. There is no such thing as a bad weapon in Monster Hunter Wilds, but I do think some options will outperform others in specific scenarios. I'm not going to rank any of these weapons below B tier because every weapon can be powerful in the right hands. For B tier, we have the heavy bowgun, the light bowgun, insect glaive, hammer, and the lance. The heavy bowgun definitely packs a punch, but its biggest drawback is its lack of mobility. If you want to deal massive amounts of damage from range and be agile at the same time, the bow is just better in every single way. The same thing also applies with the light bowgun. Even though it's a lighter version of the heavy bowgun and offers a bit more mobility, it doesn't have nearly as much damage or mobility as the bow. Insect Glaive is B tier in my opinion due to the lower damage output compared to some of the other weapons and the steep learning curve for beginners. It just isn't accessible enough in my opinion, but can be a flashy weapon to use if you want to kill monsters in style. The hammer, again, may seem very straightforward at first, but you'll quickly realize even though the weapon does deal a decent amount of damage to monsters, it has two major flaws. It lacks any defensive options, and if you want to be extremely efficient, you'll need to learn monster attack patterns since the hammer's attacks require more effort and preparation compared to some of the other weapons. The lance, like I said, has always had a reputation of being the least used weapon in the series, probably because it just lacks any sort of mobility and is the safest weapon to use, which can be a boring playstyle for a lot of people. For A tier weapons, we have the switch axe, gun lance, charge blade, and dual blades. The switch axe is a powerful weapon that can take on two forms, allowing you to seamlessly transition between sword mode and axe mode. This combat style makes hunting monsters incredibly fun, and you really can't go wrong with this weapon. The Gun Lance has the ability to deal massive amounts of damage and provides exceptional survivability thanks to the ability to completely negate damage with your shield. Does lack range and mobility though, so keeping up with faster monsters can seem difficult, but the damage is high enough for it to earn a spot on the A tier list. The Charge Blade isn't exactly a weapon you can just pick up and be effective with. It does require patience and timing, but if you spend some time with this weapon and learn to master it, you'll be more than prepared for your monster hunts, because honestly, the Charge Blade does have really good reach, great mobility, exceptional damage, and guarding. Dual blades offer high mobility, speed, and rewards aggressive gameplay, making it a great option for players who want to weave in and out of combat while dealing consistent damage to monsters. Now, the S tier weapons are the best weapon choices in Monster Hunter Wilds. The Greatsword deserves a spot on the S tier list because it is very versatile. With the introduction of the new focus mode, aiming is now more precise, making this weapon even deadlier. It's also the perfect weapon choice for beginners since it doesn't have a steep learning curve at all and has the potential to deal massive amounts of damage. The Longsword is an incredibly well-rounded weapon, in my opinion. It's an easy weapon to pick up. When you attack monsters, you charge up a spirit gauge, which your hunter can then use to unleash powerful spirit blade attacks, which are awesome. The range is really good, thanks to the weapon's moveset, and it's also great for counterattacks, thanks to moves like Foresight Slash. The bow is the best ranged weapon in Monster Hunter Wilds, hands down. The bow will make your hunter extremely agile, you can easily build a trick gauge bar by attacking monsters, and you can deal massive amounts of damage if you play it correctly, allowing you to destroy monsters from a safer distance. The sword and shield is S tier in my opinion because it's really simple to use and it has its own built-in defensive ability. It might be the perfect starter weapon for beginners and can deal a really good amount of damage in the right hands. And lastly, we have the hunting horn. Now, some of you might have not expected this to be on the S tier list, but believe it or not, this is actually one of the best weapons in the game due to its ability to apply buffs to party members, including attack boosts, ailment negation, health recovery, and so much more. Having someone with a hunting horn on your team will make hunts much easier, which is why it deserves a spot on the S tier list. I hope this weapon guide makes your decision a little bit easier. I know it can seem overwhelming with 14 weapons to choose from, but trust me guys, there is no wrong choice. There may be slightly better options, yes, but every single weapon is effective enough for slaying monsters. Thanks again for clicking on the video and sticking around until the end. This is the first of many Hunter Wilds videos coming to the channel, so if you want to see more content like this, please leave a thumbs up, turn on those bell notifications, and subscribe for more. I'll talk to you guys soon.